Number 10. Man-eating snakes of Borneo. In Borneo, there's an old story that goes like this. A group of natives left their villages one day and retreated into the jungle to get away from the Dutch colonists who were trying to take over their land. They built small villages in the rainforest with their families, and this was working out fine for them until their children began to disappear one at a time. This happened for over a week. Was it the work of jungle nomads or evil jungle spirits, or a big cat? To find out, the villagers set a trap and baited it with another child, sacrificing one more life to stop the slaughter of many more. The creature that finally emerged from the river was massive and limbless and covered in scales. It turned out that there were 2 huge dragons stealing the children and taking them back to their lair. The villagers then hunted the dragons down with axes and spears to get their revenge. It sounds like a story from a fairy tale, but there could actually be some truth to it. There obviously weren't dragons stealing children, but experts say there may have been some giant snakes. The Borneo rainforest is about 140 million years old, and it's home to many undiscovered animals. There are also about 150 species of snake here. According to Sarah Ruana from the American Museum of Natural History in New York, it's as if every kind of snake in the world somehow slithered its way to Borneo. But what about the man-eating snakes so big they became dragons in the local legends? Nobody's entirely sure. Experts say there are Sumatran pit vipers, blue coral snakes, king cobras, and even giant pythons living in Borneo. And any one of them could have been the man-eating dragons from the story. Number 9. Everglades python. A python hunter from South Florida, Mike Kimmel, known locally as the Python Cowboy, has captured one of the most monstrous Everglades beasts known to man. The battle was so epic that the Python Cowboy was left covered in blood and horribly bruised. And this guy is actually used to catching snakes, just ask him. But he's used to catching snakes that are only around 10 feet long. He couldn't believe it when he stumbled upon a Burmese python in the middle of the Florida Everglades that measured roughly 17 feet in length. That's a preposterous snake, and it's too big to even believe, especially in Florida. According to what the Python Cowboy told CNN News, he was at first pretty intimidated by this large snake. But after a bit of a wrestle and some pretty nasty bites, he managed to take the beast back to his boat. And in the end, the snake measured about 150 pounds. But believe it or not, this isn't even the biggest snake ever captured in the Everglades. According to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, the biggest python ever captured in the state was 18 feet long and 8 inches. Number 8. Snakes with legs. Something even more terrifying than words can even describe was recently discovered fossilized in South America. Snake bones have been found in the area before, but nothing quite like this. At the Brazilian Crato Formation, a famous fossil site that dates back to the Cretaceous period, researcher David Martil from the University of Portsmouth found the fossilized remains of a giant snake that had legs. Oh yes, snakes used to have legs. As if these horrible monsters weren't scary enough slithering and hissing around, they used to scuttle. Based on the analysis of the fossil, it turned out this mysterious species of snake once had a pair of tiny front legs and a pair of hind legs that were tiny as well. It looked exactly like a giant boa constrictor or a deadly python, only it had feet. It also had sharp claws on the end of those legs, making it even more terrifying as a predator. What's really interesting is that according to David Martil, this snake is blatant evidence that serpents evolved from lizards, slowly losing their legs and turning into some of the scariest monsters on the planet. We don't know exactly how big the four-legged snakes could grow, but they were definitely huge. They may have grown to be the same size as modern giant snakes, but they could claw your face off. Glad are you that snakes don't have legs anymore. Number 7. Giant red-bellied snake. An abnormally large red-bellied snake was recently captured in the Newcastle suburb of New South Wales in Australia, unlike anything snake catcher Jeff Deleuze had ever seen before. Red-bellied snakes aren't actually that dangerous. They aren't venomous, and normally they don't get much bigger than about 3 feet long. This is because the snakes are so common that they often die at a young age by being run over by a car or decapitated by somebody's shovel. The snake Jeff discovered in his client's house, hiding beneath the air conditioning unit, was a formidable monster. He estimated it to be roughly 20 years old and nearly 15 feet long. Yikes, that's almost triple what ordinary red-bellied snakes grow to be. He called it the biggest red-bellied snake of his career. But how did such a monster snake live to be so long? Probably the snake had been surviving in the remote brush outside the community. But as the temperature heated up and people moved in with their air conditioning, the massive serpent was drawn to all that cool air. And in the Australian heat, that's totally understandable. So, where would you hide from the blazing sun if you were a snake? Let us know in the comments section down below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and the subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 6. Abnormal snake lair. The largest concentration of endangered garter snakes ever was just found living in an underdeveloped patch of wetlands near the National Airport in San Francisco. This is actually a pretty weird story. The San Francisco garter snake is often called the most beautiful serpent in North America. It's a stunning serpent with an orange head, turquoise blue body, and bold and vivid stripes of orange and red. But until recently, it was believed that there were only around 2,000 of them living in the wild. But when researchers with the United States Geological Survey went to check out the wetlands near the airport, they found a terrifying lair of about 1,300 of them, slithering and writhing in a mess of slippery slitheriness. Experts call it the largest concentration ever discovered, raising hope that the garter snake may live beyond the next decade. However, the huge pile of snakes is still disturbing on all accounts. Imagine being that poor guy who accidentally stepped foot into a literal hive of 1,300 of these colorful snakes. They can't really do much damage, but that's still pretty freaky. Number 5. Scorched serpents. After a devastating series of forest fires in Indonesia in July, workers discovered a graveyard of scorched serpents unlike anything previously seen in the country. It was bad enough that people had to flee their homes to get away from the destructive blaze. But what nobody had expected was for a bizarre race of supergiant snakes to get burnt up in the fire. These poor snakes had nowhere to go as their home was literally on fire all around them, stretching for miles and miles. The snakes were found charred as if burned alive, and although they were hard to identify because of their crispy condition, they were generally believed to be pythons, probably Burmese pythons. Now wait until you hear how huge they were. A normal python only grows to be about 20 feet long. They're even smaller in the state of Florida, but these burnt ones in Indonesia were estimated at about 32 feet in length, bigger than any python found to date. Everyone was in disbelief over the size of them, and nobody knows how such massive serpents went undiscovered for so long. Maybe they were smarter than other snakes and stayed hidden in the forest. But unfortunately, they were all burned up and we may never see another group of these pythons this big again. Number 4. The Congo snake. In 1959, a Belgian pilot who fought during World War II was flying back to an airbase in the Congo when he saw something shocking beneath his helicopter. The creature would become known as the giant Congo snake, and the pilot allegedly saw it slither out of a hole and vanish into the scrubland. The pilot described the snake as being roughly 50 feet long, which would make it even bigger than the extinct Titan boa, which could grow to a maximum of about 42 feet. What makes this encounter so much more realistic than others that you hear about is that another guy on board the helicopter managed to take a picture of the monster. The pilot later said he was scared that if he got too close to the ground, the snake might have lunged upwards and attacked the helicopter. The pilot openly confessed, "I feel and I'm convinced if I had been in its range, it would have struck at me." Of course, there is absolutely no way of knowing if the giant snake would have been aggressive at all, but the sheer size of it was enough to make the pilot wary. He later described the massive serpent as having a dark shade of green and brown, with a white-colored belly, and claimed the snake's head alone was 3 feet wide and that the jaw was of a triangular shape. These people are all credible witnesses, too. They were war veterans who had no reason at all to lie. But even today, zoologists and scientific professionals denounce the story as a hoax, and say the picture taken of the serpent isn't even real. And unfortunately, since none of us were there to witness the beast, we can't really say for certain whether it is real or not. If it was a 50-foot snake, the big question is, well, where is it now? Do you believe these pilots and passengers' incredible story? Do you think there's a way the picture is fake? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Number 3. Climbing snakes. If you live in Pennsylvania, specifically in Pittsburgh, you need to be on the lookout for giant climbing snakes that have been terrifying the locals. A giant snake caused chaos and panic among a group of visitors to Frick Park when they saw what they thought was some kind of serpent demon. These snakes are notorious for climbing trees and cliffs with incredible speed. And for those who aren't aware, a day of adventure could turn to horror with an accidental encounter. Yikes. After the photos of the huge black snake went viral online, Chris Urban from the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission was quick to point it out as a black rat snake, something that's actually quite common all throughout Pennsylvania. The one that scared the visitors at the park seemed abnormally large, though it wasn't actually dangerous. It was really just a garter snake, but because it was completely black and several feet long, It scared the pants off the unsuspecting tourists. Yeah, I probably would have been scared too. Number 2. Washed up snake. At Sunset Beach in North Carolina, a giant snake terrified numerous beachgoers when they found it washed up on the shore. Nobody knows what kind of giant snake was witnessed at the beach, but pictures of it appeared online showing an enormous creature that may have come from a faraway land. The snake looked to be almost 10 feet long and was definitely dead, probably drowned while out in the ocean. Nobody knew if it was venomous, and besides, they were too scared to get close enough to check. One theory was that the snake was a type of water moccasin, which can grow to be 6 feet long. Another name for the water moccasin is the cottonmouth, one of the most venomous semi-aquatic snakes in North America. It's just lucky the snake washed up on shore instead of biting some poor swimmer. And not too long before the snake sighting, there was an alligator sighting as well. Forget a shark attack, now North Carolinians need to worry about underwater snake attacks and gators. Number 1. Giant snake of Mount Tsurigi. In Japan, legend has it that a giant serpent resides near the peak of Mount Tsurigi, the second tallest mountain on the island of Shikoku. The first eyewitness accounts of the mysterious beast came from the year 1973, when a group of forestry workers allegedly encountered a snake they estimated to be 33 feet long and as thick as a telephone pole. The creature had shiny black scales and made a disturbing chirping sound. It was so terrifying that the forestry workers ran as fast as they could off the mountain. Following the sighting, the workers gathered a small group of locals to hunt the beast down. But despite hundreds of people combing the mountainside for the snake, it was never seen again. But here's the deal. Even though the snake was never seen a second time, the people looking for it did actually find giant snake tracks that measured roughly 16 inches across. That's about the width of a small tree. Nobody knows what happened to the giant snake of Mount Tsurigi, but considering how many people witnessed the tracks and the beast itself, it's safe to say it really does exist. But where is it?
Have you guys seen The Housewife and The Hustler? If not, you should. Famous attorney Thomas Girardi has been formally charged with misappropriating his client's funds. Basically, he has been stealing from widows, orphans, and burn victims to pay for his lavish lifestyle, as well as that of his wife, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Erica Girardi, aka Erica Jane. It started out small. Thomas allegedly kept $56,000 from a settlement won by a couple in West Virginia against a medical device manufacturer. The manufacturer wired the money to the lawyer, but he kept the funds for himself and told his client that he was still waiting for the money. But what was he thinking? Did he think they would just forget? People don't forget about $56,000 they are owed. In yet another bizarre case, the lawyer kept 40% of $500,000 awarded to a widow from a settlement, apparently jacking up their agreed deal of 33%. In other words, he bamboozled her. The poor burn victims from a gas line pipe explosion that left them traumatized for life are still waiting for their money to pay for medical bills. This case is laid out in more detail in The Housewife and The Hustler. There was a lawsuit filed against Boeing after a plane crashed in Indonesia. Bog Tommy swore to champion the victim's cause and successfully sued the company. Money was awarded to the victims' widows and orphans, but Thomas made at least $2 million disappear that was meant to go to these families in a seriously dirtbag move. Who steals money from widows and orphans? Now there are some major lawsuits that he is facing, as well as his wife. He is allegedly diagnosed with Alzheimer's and is denying everything. Now lawyers representing the victims are going after his wife since she used to brag about her clothes and jewelry, and she spent $45,000 a month on her glam squad and pay for all those hair extensions and latex suits and promote her music career. She allegedly received $25 million into her business account, most likely the payment that was supposed to go to the victims. She has since filed for divorce. But the question is, how much was she actually involved? Big Tommy owes around $56 million to various clients and lenders, and the cases are still ongoing. We'll just have to wait and see. Number 9. Inappropriate Zoom meeting. During the pandemic, Zoom meetings became the norm in the lawyer world. But some lawyers didn't quite figure out how to properly behave during these meetings. In fact, some people displayed some pretty inappropriate behavior during their meetings. A Florida firm recently had to dismiss one of their partners on the council after she decided to get a little frisky during the meeting that they had with their client. It began pretty ordinary. The woman was sitting at her desk looking completely normal. Then from the right side of the frame, a man can be seen crawling on his hands and knees towards her, thinking that he can't be seen. However, it was pretty obvious. The woman moves over to give the guy room under the desk, and then he disappears. Nobody knows for sure what happened next, but judging by the faces the woman makes, we have a pretty good idea. Not PG, that's for sure, and not something you should be doing during work. After the meeting, the woman was swiftly fired. Her superiors watched the video and could tell exactly what she was doing, and so too could the clients, who were furious. We don't know if she got a new job, but hopefully at the next one, she'll keep strange men out from under her desk during business meetings. Or at the very least, maybe she'll learn how to operate Zoom and keep the camera pointed at a higher angle. Number 8. In the monkey enclosure. A lawyer got into a bit of trouble recently after she did something incredibly irrational and totally insane. The woman was caught on video at the El Paso Zoo breaking into the spider monkey enclosure to feed them hot Cheetos. I know, right? Why? It just doesn't make sense. Was she intoxicated? Or just thought she could do whatever she wanted? As a professional lawyer, this probably isn't the kind of thing you should be doing on your weekend. Visiting the zoo is perfectly fine, but maybe don't break into the monkey enclosure while spectators are filming. The woman was fortunate that she didn't get torn apart by the extremely strong primates, which according to the zookeeper could have easily brought her to the ground and done substantial damage. Even the director of the El Paso Zoo called the woman's actions stupid and said she was extremely lucky. There was never any motivation given for her wild break-in. It's not like the monkeys needed to be fed Cheetos. After the footage went viral, she was fired from her job at the law firm. Not only that, but she is also facing criminal charges, with the zoo very much wanting to press charges against her for endangering the animals and potentially giving the monkeys COVID. Number 7. The 9/11 scam. A lawyer was reduced to nothing but a common thief after he confessed to participating in a scam that involved ripping off a police officer for a cool $1 million. This officer was stricken by cancer, which he had gotten from being part of the rescue team at Ground Zero when the World Trade Center fell on 9/11. John Ferreira filed his compensation claim after getting cancer. His attorney and longtime friend, Gustavo Villa, was supposed to give him a massive payout. Instead, Villa pocketed most of it. He spent 90% of the funds he had stolen, including money that was supposed to go to the cancer-stricken hero's wife and son. In a shocking hearing at the White Plains Federal Court, the lawyer admitted to embezzling money from the government, taken from the Victim Compensation Fund. Out of all the funds to embezzle, this has got to be the worst. The only consolation here is that the lawyer knew he did something terrible. But still, it took him 4 years to admit his wrongdoings. He only gave the cop $100,000, then made up excuses from between 2016 and 2020 for where the rest of the money was. Where was all that money? It was spent on the lawyer's life. He now faces 10 years in prison despite pleading guilty. It seems like a fair punishment, if you ask me. What do you think? Should he have received jail time for this? How much is fair? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to World List if you haven't already. Number 6. Fighting the judge. A lawyer is supposed to fight for the client, but in Florida, things got a little too literal when a lawyer and a judge stepped outside of the courtroom and got into a brawl. Amazingly, the whole thing was captured on video. It began when Judge John Murphy got into an argument with a public defender, Andrew Weinstock. Andrew had simply asked that his defendant be allowed a speedy trial. The request devolved into an argument, and the judge was captured at one point, saying, "If you want to fight, let's go out back." Well, that's exactly what the two men did. They left the courtroom, and while out in the hall, the judge beat the snot out of the lawyer. Naturally, the judge denied hitting the lawyer. But it was all caught on video and pretty cut and dry. The judge was then labeled as unfit to remain in office and basically fired. The lawyer wasn't in any trouble, but maybe the next time a judge tries to take him outside, he'll know better than to walk into a trap and get beat up. I guess all those Florida man memes about crazy guys in Florida are true, you know? Even the judge is a Florida man. Number 5. The pimp. A Florida defense attorney has been arrested over some pretty terrifying accusations. What is it about lawyers in Florida that just don't mix? John Gillespie, 71 years old, was busted for a few different things, each of them more despicable than the last. First of all, the police say that John was involved in the human trafficking of minors. Additionally, John was accused of exchanging legal assistance for inappropriate favors with clients as young as 15. If that's not horrifying, I don't know what is. Additionally, John had been accused of running a prostitution ring for the comfort of his home. It's not clear exactly how many women he was involved with in his underground trafficking ring, but it was a probe by the Orlando Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation that finally caught on to John's debaucherously evil scheme. As if being a shady lawyer wasn't skeezy enough, the 71-year-old had to take things to a whole different level of scumbag. Number 4. The DUI. A lawyer in Las Vegas who specializes in DUIs has been arrested on charges for driving under the influence. It doesn't really get more ironic than that. It happened just recently, and according to Fox 5 Vegas News, it was his third offense. The DUI defense attorney actually crashed his car while wasted. He drove his Aston Martin, a very fancy car driven by James Bond in the 007 movies, into a Toyota SUV, causing both people in the Toyota to be taken to the hospital with minor injuries. A man named Garrett Ogata didn't even have a driver's license, as it had already been taken away following previous DUIs. But what happens when a DUI lawyer is charged with a DUI? Does he represent himself? In this case, it probably wouldn't be a good idea. Ogata clearly has a drinking problem, and this time, since he physically hurt 2 people and sent them to the hospital, you'd think he was probably going to lose his license for good, and hopefully spend a bit of time behind bars where he can sober up. But no, apparently, he's still practicing law today. Number 3. Dodging bullets. Jerry Curry was 53 years old and practicing law when he pulled some moves straight out of the Matrix and dodged bullets in real time. Well, he didn't really dodge them. It's more like he managed to get shot in the best possible places. He got hit with 5 bullets in his right arm and a 6th that got lodged in the back of his neck, all while trying to avoid the bullets as he was blasted at point-blank range by a deranged lunatic. It all happened when a man named William Stryer walked up to Jerry, asked what his name was, and then pulled out a revolver and opened fire. It was revealed later that Stryer had won a settlement using Jerry's law firm, but the trust fund was withholding funds that Stryer desperately wanted. When things didn't go his way, he began calling the law office and threatening to kill people. Finally, he made good with his threat and tried to gun down the lawyer. Luckily, even after getting hit with 6 bullets, Jerry made a full recovery. He suffered slight muscle and nerve damage, but walked out of the hospital feeling, according to him, pretty good. As for Stryer, he was arrested and locked up, and he's definitely not getting any money now. Number 2. Snitches get stitches. A criminally inclined lawyer from Massachusetts made some pretty outlandish threats and killed another man. His name is Michael Mascaritolo, and he and his girlfriend were arrested in connection with the death of a man named Robert McKenna after his corpse was found rotting in his home. Here's how it all went down according to the court hearings. The lawyer tried to rob the victim with 2 of his friends. The 3 of them broke into Robert's home with the intention of stealing his gun collection, his African art, and the marijuana he was growing in his house. Obviously, Robert wasn't really interested in being robbed, and he tried to fight the men off. At some point, Robert was pushed through a glass window, which severed the artery in his arm. He was then beaten over the head with a frying pan until dead. After the death, Michael the lawyer tried to get rid of the stolen guns. He handed them over to a female acquaintance, saying she needed to hide them for him, then threatening her by saying, "Snitches get stitches." Obviously, the lawyer was watching a bit too much action TV. She snitched anyway, and Michael was quickly busted for the crime and given a life sentence with no possibility of parole. Number 1. Mob connections. An attorney from Long Island was recently busted running a scheme with the local mafia to steal money from winners of the lottery jackpot. According to federal prosecutors in Brooklyn, the lawyer managed to steal over $100 million in prize money. Jason Curlin siphoned money from jackpot winners and then convinced them to let him invest some of their winnings smartly, so they wouldn't run out of money later. But instead of actually investing their money, he handed the cash over to members of the Genovese crime family for shady investments. The lawyer received kickbacks for giving the money to the mob, earning a total of $107 million between 2018 and now. In the end, a federal wiretap brought the investigation to a close. The mob members that the lawyer was associated with were busted on a federal wiretap, threatening to rip someone's head off in front of his kids. In another shocking wiretap, they were heard threatening to make a guy watch as they ripped the teeth out of his son's mouth, then do worse things to his wife. It was a pretty brutal scam with savage monsters, and all the victims ever wanted was to be handed over their lottery money. It really makes you wonder why you need a lawyer just to get paid for a game you already won fair and square, especially when these kinds of rackets are going on all the time.
A reality star was left with her nose literally rotting off of her face after a plastic surgery gone wrong. Anastasia Balanskaya is a Russian reality TV star who recently turned to Instagram to ask her followers to help pay for corrective surgery after the botched nose job left her with a black nose, which she said is about 2 months away from decaying right off her face. Amazingly, the rot didn't start right away. She actually had the procedure done a few years ago. After the surgery, her nose swelled and began to rot from the inside, something she couldn't detect since it wasn't visible from the outside. Her body had a bad reaction to the implant. And then no matter how many times she tried to correct the procedure, it just got worse and worse. Finally, after years of failed antibiotics, doctors told her it was too late. She's now on the cusp of having her nose gone for good. A simple surgery turned her from a gorgeous woman into a noseless ghoul just like Voldemort. Even with money raised for corrective surgery, there's no guarantee that she'll ever have a nose on her face again. Number 9. Fake Florida surgeon. A Florida woman has been arrested for pretending to be a plastic surgeon and botching somebody's nose job. Her arrest came shortly after she performed nose surgery on a man whose face ended up disfigured. Her name is Alcalira Jimenez de Rodriguez, and the Miami Herald reported that she was arrested in Doral, apparently while in the middle of performing yet another procedure. Detectives burst into her office and put her in handcuffs, and she was later charged with practicing medicine without a license. But get a load of this. The guy who complained to the police after getting the failed rhinoplasty told authorities that he paid $2,000 for the surgery. If you're paying $2,000 for a person to reconfigure your nose, chances are you're getting ripped off. Not saying he deserved what happened to him, but he definitely should have sensed something sketchy was going on. Even more horrifying is that the poor guy was awake while the fake surgeon performed the job, and in the following days, he realized his nose wasn't healing properly and was actually deformed. According to what the unfortunate victim told a news outlet, the fake surgeon ruined his life. He's now going to have a disfigured nose forever. Number 8. The Tijuana Special. This next story gives us a major lesson on saving money. When it comes to plastic surgery, just don't do that. 3 women from California wanted to save a bit of cash on their cosmetic work, so they decided to head down to Tijuana. Many people do this to save a few bucks since medical care in the US can be dramatically overpriced. But as you might have guessed, not a single one of the women this time left Tijuana unscathed. One of the women died inside the clinic. Another needed to be put on dialysis because her kidneys started to fail. And the other was hospitalized for 2 weeks. The woman who died was just hoping to get a tummy tuck surgery. She passed away while on the operating table, but don't worry. The clinic did offer a full refund of the $6,700 that the woman paid to be basically murdered. And to make matters worse, the clinic responsible did not face any legal action at all. And they hid the responsible doctor away from reporters. Even the Baja California Secretary of Health refused to respond or make any comments on the situation. They got away clean, while the 3 women were left dead and dying. Number 7. Lumpy lips. A mom from Connecticut wanted to improve her appearance. She was already what the typical person might consider a good-looking woman, but she thought, hey, I'll get myself a lip job. Well, her lip job turned into a nightmare when she was left with lumpy lips and a misshapen nose. She went from being an ordinary woman to looking like an orc from Lord of the Rings. But how did this disaster unfold? What went wrong? She had signed up to get lip filler, a relatively simple procedure that gives a person plumper lips. But instead of making her lips plump and juicy, the filler made them lopsided and quite frankly kind of hideous. She had to get a second surgery just to fix the nightmare of the first one. And when all was said and done, she claimed in an interview that she now feels uglier than she did before the operation. This was probably one of the worst experiences of the mother's life. Even after she healed, her lips still didn't look right, and her nose was still kinda wacky. The worst part was that she had nobody to blame. The filler just didn't work like it was supposed to, which is a risk you kinda have to be willing to take when you're getting injections. Little did she know this risk would leave her face permanently scarred. So what are your thoughts on these kinds of surgeries? Would you consider getting any work done? What if someone paid you like $1 million? Let us know in the comments down below. And be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Number 6. Brain dead. A woman in China signed up for a bit of cosmetic work. She was 34 years old when she underwent a procedure known as fat grafting. It's where you take the fat from your thighs and inject it into your forehead and the area around your eyes. Yes, we understand how crazy that sounds, but welcome to the wonderful world of plastic surgery. The goal of the procedure is to achieve a youthful appearance. The fat in your forehead is supposed to get rid of the wrinkles. However, this is obviously a dangerous surgery, and it was made more risky by the fact that the surgeon was practicing medicine without a license. The surgery went terribly wrong, leaving the Chinese woman brain dead. Before she even got off the operating table, her brain had been turned into a vegetable. Later on in the hospital, the woman died due to complications. The local authorities found out about the incident and quickly arrested the surgeon. Law enforcement is now trying to charge the supposed doctor for practicing medicine illegally, though she hasn't been officially charged with anything just yet. And to be quite honest, she might get away with just a warning even though she killed someone by injecting fat into their face without having the slightest clue what she was really doing. Number 5. Toothless celebrity. Former model and TV star Katie Price has admitted to some serious surgical mishaps that she's had throughout the years. After 26 years in the entertainment business, beginning as a model in 1995 at the young age of 17, she's gone under the knife dozens of times for getting facelifts, lip filler, a new nose, and even 12 breast augmentations. She even recently did a full-body liposuction. But not all of these experiences were successful. For example, in 2019, a facelift surgery left her in some seriously rough misery. She found that her wound was infected, and there was pus leaking out of her face. She woke up to find her pillow covered in a sickening yellow ooze and needed to seek immediate medical attention. We're almost vomiting just talking about it. But one of the worst experiences that she's had by far had to do with her teeth. You see, it may look like she has perfect teeth, but her real teeth have been shaved to tiny shark-like chompers that look absolutely horrifying so that her veneers could attach properly. It's the veneers that give her that fantastic smile. Throughout all the oral operations, she has suffered ulcers, was unable to speak, and once all of her fake teeth even fell out while she was on vacation, and she was left toothless in the Maldives. Hopefully, she learned her lesson. Number 4. 14-month coma. Emmeline was 19 years young when she decided to get breast enhancement surgery. It would be the last major decision she ever made. The surgery took place in August of 2019, but something went horribly wrong. She was left in a coma for 14 months after the surgery until she ultimately died in the hospital. The young girl's parents sued the plastic surgeon, Dr. Jeffrey Kim, and his nurse anesthetist, Rex Meeker, for negligence. According to the parents, the doctor left the young girl alone for 15 minutes after administering the anesthesia, something that should absolutely never be done in case medical complications happen in reaction to the anesthesia. During the 15 minutes that Emmeline was unobserved, she went into cardiac arrest, stopped breathing, and died on the table. But don't worry, this story gets even more brutal. The doctors performed CPR, then waited over 5 hours before they called 911. And because of this, Emmeline went into a months-long coma where she had to be fed through a tube. In the last days of her life, she was living in a nursing home, but she contracted pneumonia. After being rushed to the hospital, she died after having multiple heart attacks. And sadly, all of this happened because of a boob job. Number 3. Elf ears. There's a bizarre beauty trend going on in China that you're not going to believe. Forget plastic surgery to get a smaller nose, people are currently lining up to get pointy elf ears. But just wait a second, they aren't inspired by the fairy tales like you might think. And they don't actually want to look like elves. Instead, by enlarging their ears and making them pointier, women in China are claiming that their faces look slimmer and more attractive. That's wild, right? Song Yao, who herself got the surgery done to enhance her ears, told Vice News that she thinks she looks more energetic. And since it's a pretty simple procedure, it only costs about $1,500 in China. The most popular doctor performs over 6 elf ear surgeries per day. The procedure involves injecting hyaluronic acid into the tips of the ear, which makes them plump up. This procedure does come with some risks, though. It is very easy for the ear to get infected, and at such a strange spot, it's even difficult to treat once it's gotten to that point. Blood clots on the ear are also very common, which in some cases can turn fatal. But even knowing the risks, thousands of people continue to get the surgery. At this point, it's not a matter of if the trend finds its way to the rest of the world, but when. Number 2. A botched butt. A woman almost ended her marriage by accident after getting an impromptu butt surgery. Her name is Juliana, and she hired a discount doctor in Colombia to get the fat sucked out of her back and then recycled back into her buttocks. It's a fairly common procedure, and one that she somehow didn't tell her husband about. She claimed that it just kind of happened, a spur-of-the-moment kind of deal. No wonder it went wrong. Then when her husband asked what was going on with her much larger behind, she told him that she'd been working out more. Of course, the husband wasn't stupid. He assumed that she had done some plastic surgery, but she denied it fervently. It became such a problem that their marriage almost ended. But things got even worse for Juliana. She realized there was something wrong with the implant after about a year went by. She had pain in her backside and went to the doctor to see what was wrong. It turned out that the discount surgeon had injected her with silicone, which can be fatal if the silicone gets into a person's blood supply. The silicone can clot the blood and cause immediate death. In the end, Juliana had to get the implants removed. She was left looking deformed, with her buttocks deflated and weird-looking. Juliana said recently in an interview that she feels ashamed, and also admitted that after the whole ordeal, she and her husband will probably split up anyways. Number 1. Elephant Man lips. A nurse named Billie Rucroft was left looking like the Elephant Man after a botched operation with lip fillers. Her lips swelled to nearly double their normal size after the filler was injected into her top lip. She had the procedure done in her living room by a couple who charged her around $100 for the treatment. She should have known something was wrong immediately when the operators got up and hurried out of the house following the injection. 30 minutes after they left, Billie's lips swelled up like 2 big balloons. The young girl was obviously horrified by what was happening, and so she tried to get a hold of the woman who was giving her the injections. But the woman dismissed her claims and said it wasn't her fault and that Billie needed to go to the hospital. She was obviously a quack, and it's kind of shocking that she hasn't been put behind bars yet. Luckily, the doctors at the hospital were able to give Billie a steroid injection to calm the swelling, and a course of painkillers to keep her lips numb and at ease throughout the night. By the next day, her lips had started to go back to normal, but still, it was a very frightening experience for her, one that, believe it or not, she repeated 2 more times. Though the next 2 times the injections actually worked. But you would think she'd learn a thing or two by now. In 1897, Swedish explorer Solomon August André and 2 companions, Knut Frankel and Niels Strindberg, attempted to reach the North Pole by hot air balloon. They set off from the Svalbard archipelago in Norway and traveled somewhat aimlessly for the next 65 hours, covering just 295 miles before encountering a storm and having to land the balloon on pack ice. Over the next 2 months, the trio pulled their supplies on foot and shot polar bears for food while combating the elements. Along the way, Strindberg took around 200 photos with his camera, documenting their daily struggles for the rest of the world to eventually see. Meanwhile, André and Frankel kept detailed diaries of their experiences and challenges. Within 2 weeks after arriving at White Island, east of the Svalbard archipelago, the men were dead. Their fate remained a mystery until 1930. When the Norwegian Bradvag expedition discovered their remains and their personal effects. No detailed examination was carried out to determine their causes of death, which remain a topic of debate among scholars to this day. Records show that the men grew increasingly weak and tired, and that they were always cold and wet. They frequently suffered from foot pains and diarrhea. The most commonly accepted theory is that the group likely died from trichinosis, a parasitic disease brought on by eating undercooked polar bear meat. But because all 3 were cremated, we will never know for sure what sealed their fate during their frigid and exhausting journey. Number 8. Discovery Mutiny. The search for the Northwest Passage began centuries before the ill-fated HMS Erebus and HMS Mutiny disappeared under the command of Sir John Franklin in one of history's most famous expedition disasters. After English explorer Henry Hudson and his crew spent the winter of 1611 icebound in Hudson Bay, in what is now northeastern Canada, the ice finally broke, and he decided that the crew must continue onward with their journey. Fed up with their suffering, The starving crew members placed their captain, his teenage son, and 7 others in a small boat, and they were never seen again. This small group rowed desperately to keep up with the departing vessel, the Discovery, whose crew released more sails in order to get away from those they'd left behind. While the fate of Hudson and his companions is unknown, it's safe to say that they most likely perished in the frigid Arctic environment. The mutineers fared slightly better, with 5 of the 13 men dying on their way back to Europe. Number 7. The Franklin Expedition. During the 19th century, explorers scrambled to find a polar sea route linking the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, known as the Northwest Passage. One such attempt, led by Sir John Franklin, set out from England on May 19, 1845. The 2 ships under Franklin's command, the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror, contained a cumulative 129 officers and sailors, none of whom survived. Both vessels disappeared around 2 months into the trip, after they were last seen near Passage's entrance in Baffin Bay. As experts eventually learned, the ships became stranded by ice in Victoria Strait, in what is now the Canadian territory of Nunavut. After spending a year icebound, the crews abandoned ship for reasons that remain unclear to this day, as they had stocked enough food and supplies to survive for a few years. Clues such as graves, human remains, personal effects, written messages, and Inuit eyewitness accounts turned up in various places, suggesting that the men died at different times and from different causes, including hypothermia, lead poisoning or zinc deficiency, starvation, and diseases like scurvy. Some of the crew members' bones contained cut marks, indicating that they became so desperate they resorted to cannibalism. The remains of the HMS Erebus and HMS Terror were discovered in 2014 and 2016, and research is ongoing as experts continue to piece together an exact picture of what led to the fateful decision to abandon ship. Number 6. Narvaez Expedition. In 1527, Spanish conquistador Panfilo de Narvaez led an expedition of 600 men to establish colonial settlements in Florida. Along the way, they wiped out an entire village of indigenous people in Cuba who greeted them with food offerings. The crew also encountered devastating storms, which claimed 2 of the fleet's ships. While en route to present-day Tampico, Mexico, the expedition was pushed north to Florida by storms, currents, and winds. They landed 15 miles north of the entrance to Tampa Bay, near Boca Ciega Bay, which Narvaez decided was unsuitable for settlement. He ordered 300 men to head northward on land and 110 others to travel in the same direction along the coast in ships. The 2 groups were to reconvene at a large harbor that Narvaez claimed was impossible to miss, but this never happened because no such large harbor existed. The land expedition suffered from disease, starvation, and the consequences of hostile encounters with indigenous populations as they attacked villages and stole their food. At one point, the expeditioners killed their own horses for food and materials. By September of 1528, the group was reduced to just 80 survivors, who washed ashore on Galveston Island off the Texas coast after attempting to sail to Mexico on makeshift rafts. They were enslaved by the local indigenous population, and they continued to perish amid the harsh conditions they encountered. Narvaez himself died at some point throughout the ordeal. Only 4 original party members survived after wandering through the American Southwest and northern Mexico for 8 years. In 1536, they crossed paths with Spanish slave catchers in Sinaloa, who helped them reach Mexico City. Number 5. Jeannette Expedition. In a bid to become the first people in recorded history to reach the North Pole, the 33-man crew of the USS Jeannette departed from San Francisco on July 8, 1879, with plans to reach their destination by sailing through the Bering Strait. Shortly after sending its last communication on August 27th, the ship became trapped in floating ice in the Bering Sea and drifted erratically for the next 21 months. In mid-June 1881, the Jeannette was slowly crushed under the pressure of the ice in the Siberian Sea. Left stranded 497 miles north of the Siberian mainland, the crew unloaded some provisions onto the ice and began the long, arduous trek inland as their ship sank to its watery grave. With 3 small boats in tow, they trudged through the snow and slush that was sometimes waist-deep, encountering brutal weather along the way. 20 crew members, including Captain George Washington DeLong, died throughout the journey, with at least 1 man succumbing to starvation and 7 others perishing when their boat capsized and sank during an attempt to sail to the Siberian mainland. Only some of the Jeannette's wreckage was ever found, appearing on an ice floe in 1884. In 2015, Russian adventurer and TV personality Andrei Koroshev announced plans to locate and recover the sunken vessel. Unfortunately, finding the ship has proven more difficult than he thought it would be, and the Jeannette remains missing to this day. Number 4. ABUBAKARI Expedition. During the 14th century, a powerful ruler in the Mali Empire named ABUBAKARI II reigned over much of modern-day West Africa. But he was apparently unfulfilled by his position in life and was curious about what else was out there in the world, waiting to be discovered. ABUBAKARI is said to have handed over the throne to his brother Kanku Musa in 1311 before attempting to cross the Atlantic Ocean with a fleet of ships that never returned. He wanted to know if the vast body of water had another bank. According to Malian scholar Gausu Diawara, who wrote a book about ABUBAKARI's travels. Nobody knows for certain what happened to the expedition, but at least 2 scholars, including Diawara, have suggested that ABUBAKARI's fleet reached the New World, making landfall in what is now Brazil. This would have been 200 years before Columbus arrived in the Americas. In their arguments, Diawara and researcher Ivan van Sertima referenced an abstract of Columbus's log by Bartolomé de la Casa, which describes encountering black people on the Caribbean island of Hispaniola, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic. Many, if not most, mainstream experts hesitate to agree, citing a lack of solid evidence of pre-Columbian contact between Africa and the New World. No African artifacts from the era have been found throughout the Americas, though that doesn't mean that none are there waiting to be discovered. Number 3. Terra Nova Expedition. Between 1910 and 1913, an Antarctic expedition led by British Navy Captain Robert Falcon Scott sought to acquire new scientific information and to be the first group of humans to reach the geographic South Pole. Scott's team initially consisted of 14 men, but most of them abandoned the journey and headed back to their base at Ross Island at some point along the way. The remaining 5 explorers reached the South Pole in January of 1912. Only to realize that a team led by Norwegian explorer Ronald Amundsen had beaten them by 34 days. All 5 men died on the return journey, encountering frostbite and malnutrition as they combated ruthless blizzards and the unforgiving cold. They perished one by one over a several-week span, with crew member Edgar Evans being the first to die. Crippled by a war injury and possibly gangrene, Lawrence Oates was the next to pass away. In what's believed to be an act of self-sacrifice, he left the group's tent and never returned, most likely to prevent the rest of the men from being slowly downed by his debilitating condition. Scott's journal entries detailed the unimaginable suffering he and the 3 remaining survivors endured. In his diary, he confronted the realization that they were all going to die, writing in one of his last passages that these rough notes and our dead bodies must tell the tale. The men who had stayed behind during the expedition embarked on a search for their missing crew members the next month and discovered 3 dead bodies in their sleeping bags. Number 2. Ludwig LEICHHART. Ludwig LEICHHART was a Prussian-born novelist and explorer who mounted 3 overland expeditions to explore Australia during the 19th century. He developed a reputation for his resilience early on in his journeys, at one point returning to Sydney with his crew long after they had been presumed dead. Things took a turn for the worse during Leichhardt's 3rd expedition in 1848, which sought to cross the Australian interior on horseback, a nearly 3,000-mile east-to-west journey through the unexplored wilderness. Leichhardt's party, which consisted of 5 Europeans and 2 Aboriginal guides, was last seen on April 3rd of that year in the Darling Downs region of southern Queensland. Their fate remains a mystery, with many naturally assuming that the party died at some point during what was supposed to be a 2 to 3 year journey. In 1900, an artifact known as the Leichhardt Plate was found attached to a burnt gun that was wedged into a boab tree near the Western Australian Northern Territory border. A prospector named Charles Harding, who employed the Aboriginal man who found the nameplate, kept the object until 1917, when a teenager named Reg Bristow Smith befriended him and convinced him to hand it over. The National Museum of Australia eventually gained access to the plate and determined that it's genuine. While the Leichhardt Plate suggests that the expedition made it much farther along in their journey than originally thought, its discovery does not explain what happened to the explorers. Some believe that a mutiny may have occurred, or that the party starved, drowned, or was murdered. Another more far-flung theory suggests that they lived out their days in the company of an Aboriginal tribe, never again interacting with the society from which they came. Number 1. Dyatlov Pass Incident. In January 1959, a group of 10 young but experienced cross-country skiers, consisting of 8 men and 2 women, trekked into the Ural Mountains in Russia for what was supposed to be a 3-week trip. They set up camp near the base of a peak known as Dead Mountain as a blizzard approached, and 9 of the expeditioners' mutilated bodies were later found scattered throughout the area. with several corpses bearing cracked skulls and bones, 2 missing their eyes, and another whose tongue was cut out. Searchers found their tent slashed from the inside, as if the travelers had tried escaping on a moment's notice. They had abandoned their dinners and personal effects, and some of the bodies were found wearing only socks and underwear. The only survivor, Yara Udine, had turned back earlier in the trip due to back pain. Hypothermia and frostbite were ruled as the official causes of death, despite the horrific injuries on some of the corpses. Nobody was ever implicated in the suspicious deaths, despite widespread demands for justice. And in early 2019, the Russian government finally reopened its investigation into the incident. A new study claims that the group likely died in a small avalanche, and while this hypothesis is nothing new, a re-examination of the evidence stands by this as the most plausible explanation. Skeptics point out that the injuries are atypical for those caused by an avalanche, and that there was no evidence at the site of one having occurred. Computer simulations and the expeditioner's diary entries detailing strong winds challenge long-held notions about how the slope was too shallow for an avalanche, and how a lack of snowfall meant that one couldn't have happened. For now, however, the mystery remains unsolved, and the only certain fact about the Dyatlov Passage incident is that it was a horrifying tragedy that left surviving loved ones without answers or closure. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to learn more about doomed expeditions, let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe before you leave. We'll see you next time.